Everybody, video here for you today. Before I get started, I just want to say a couple things. We had a very nice, touching service for Dad down in Fort Myers yesterday morning. Got home late last night. Heard some very cool, funny stories about Dad. Everybody at his church was very nice. Kind of a whirlwind, 48 hours down there. In a bit of a haze today, but I thought I would do this video. I also want to say a very special happy birthday to a very special someone. Because if it wasn't for her encouraging me to do videos 9 years ago, you all would have never heard a word from me on YouTube, so very special happy birthday to you. Maybe some of her wisdom or artistic capabilities will be shared on this channel again. We did videos about 8 years ago together, a few of them, but let's go down to one of the most famous ancient American sites, the site of Cahokia down here in Illinois. We're going to talk about a feature I have not talked about on my channel before. I have done probably 4 or 5 videos at least on Cahokia. I think the first one was back in 2014 or 15. And here is Monk's Mound, probably the largest earthen pyramid we have in the ancient United States. Would have overlooked a city of maybe 20,000, about 1,000 years ago. But that is kind of eroding away, but you still get the idea of that step pyramid formation right there. There are some other mounds in the park, one right there, kind of an eroded one right there. One right here. There is a Woodhenge right down here, you notice. Circular feature. This was probably most likely a astronomical solar observatory on the spring equinox. Sun would have came up on a special alignment on that day. Let's talk about a feature that I have not talked about on my channel before. Kind of have to get started at Monk's Mound. But if you travel Monk's Mound, you notice this feature going right out from here. It goes through the woods, through the park, across the highway, and this right down here is called Rattlesnake Mound. You can see it clearly on Google Earth right there. Here is a link I will leave below. Ceremonial Access Road, discovered in heart of ancient city of Cahokia. And here is some imaging of the area. Let's just blow this up a little bit. But you get an idea of the shape of Monk's Mound. I believe this is LiDAR imaging of the area. You get a real good look at the smaller mounds there. Let's talk about this feature that comes out of the Grand Plaza here. You can see it here on the imaging. This is called Rattlesnake Causeway. Crosses the road or the highway down here and the railroad tracks, and it connects up with Rattlesnake Mound, and this all has to do with their afterlife belief in the Milky Way. After 85 years of study and speculation, recent digs have confirmed the presence of a ceremonial road running through the heart of Cahokia, the largest prehistoric city north of Mexico, archaeologists report. Down here it says a map of Cahokia made in 2011 using light detection and ranging or LiDAR reveals traces of a causeway leading north from the midpoint of Rattlesnake Mound. And it goes up here to Monk's Mound, but that's all for a specific reason. Here's Monk's Mound right here. And that causeway would have been just about exactly 1 mile long or 1.75 kilometers long. And here is a look at an artist rendition of what that ancient causeway looked like. This mile-long causeway, as they call it, had special meaning. Here is this artist rendition, a Rattlesnake Mound. Here is a look at it during the winter. It appears it has almost 3 humps to it. You can kind of see it there through the trees with no leaves on them. Let's talk about the meaning of this. Let's go to a story from physics.org, rediscovering the path to the Milky Way through archaeology. It says water is as much a feature of this site as the mounds that define the ancient city of Cahokia. The team is here to investigate several small borrow pits where people of Cahokia extracted much of the soil used to build their famous mounds. The scientists are beginning to think these ponds held more meaning for the original city builders than archaeologists once assumed. And they also hope to study another overlooked feature of the city of Cahokia, a causeway that cuts through the site. Paquette points to a line on the LiDAR image that looks like a narrow street running north and south. The street, he calls it a causeway, extends from a main plaza, starting just south of Monk's Mound, the largest surviving mound, all the way to a pair of twin mounds that mark the southern boundary of the plaza. The causeway is straight as an arrow and more than half a mile long. But as I showed you, that causeway extends all the way out of the park. We think the linearity of this is foundational. At the beginning of this particular city, somebody laid out a city grid and then everything initially was put on that grid. That axis marked by the causeway is 5 degrees off true north. This orientation appears to reference celestial events We leave the road and head into a wild, soggy zone choked with trees. We are skirting alongside a pair of circular mounds, but it's easy to lose sight of them. Through the thick brush, it says late winter rains fill the low areas on either side of the ancient causeway. But here you can see it built up through this swampy area here. They have a quick video attached here of this ancient causeway on this link if you want to check it out. It says we finally make our way to the causeway, climbing up out of the swampy water and onto this narrow bridge of land, which is about 60 feet across or 4-lane highway wide. I'm going to combine both of these websites here. The first story I shared was from about 5 years ago. The second one from May of this year. It says the more southern parts of Cahokia were reserved for burial mounds. Pawcatuck sees the causeway as a ritualistic space where people journeyed south, away from the land of the living and into the land of the dead. The watery world is really important to Native Americans. In eastern North America and Mesoamerica, water is a barrier between this world and the underworld, the realm of the dead. And of course, in Egypt, the Milky Way is a celestial Nile. All these native stories talk about what happens when you die. Your soul goes to the edge of the world, jumps into the Milky Way, and climbs into the sky. So a soul would travel from the world of the living down the causeway. You would bury them down there, and then they would hop into the sky. It says people in North and South America often mark where the Milky Way is at different times of the year. It turns out that on the days of the solstices, when the Milky Way is the most vertical, if you stand on Monk's Mound right before sunrise, the Milky Way arises out of the end of the causeway and kind of arcs across the sky and then taps back into the line that the causeway marks. So it seems that this had very special meaning to the people of Cahokia. Just to give you an idea, here's Monk's Mound right here, looking straight south down the causeway, the Milky Way coming up right there. I also did this video during the shutdown, the Moon Watchers of Los Emerald Mounds. The site is about 15 miles east or 25 kilometers east, and this had a 50-foot wide pathway leading all the way to Cahokia. So they were connecting their ancient sites just like the Mayans were, running causeways through the jungle that you can see from overhead today. Here's another link I will leave below. Revealing Greater Cahokia details research on ancient North American metropolis with a population between 10,000 and 30,000 in its heyday, around 1,000 years ago, and a sprawling assortment of homes, storage buildings, temples, cemeteries, mounds, and other monuments in and around what is now St. Louis and East St. Louis, Illinois. The ancient North American city known as Greater Cahokia was the first experiment in urban living in what is now known as the United States. Here are some artifacts found at Cahokia, maybe coming from a little under 1,000 years ago. This website goes over a book written on Cahokia. If you want to check it out, it says the book also details the history of the land and landscape and processes that destroyed and in some cases preserved parts of the site when newcomers built their towns, highways, and farms on top of the ancient city. And here, what is this? This is the Big Mound of St. Louis. I covered this about 2 years ago. I will leave the link for that video below. One of the largest mounds in the ancient United States was right across the river from Cahokia. So in ancient times, this was kind of a twin cities right in the middle of ancient America. I have talked about many aspects of Cahokia, the Birdman of Cahokia, connected him to kind of Horus of Egypt. Here are some more artifacts. Some of these have symbolism that is pretty familiar in Mesoamerica. Here is an alignment. Look at the ancient site, maybe doing sacrifices like the Aztecs and the Mayans were doing. Here is Woodhenge. They were looking at the heavens here. Here's another link I will leave below. Several mass burials and burials of high status individuals were found in Mound 72 in Cahokia. And down here, they go over the beaded burial, somebody very important, buried with 20,000 ceremonial shells. There is a look from the top of Monk's Mound. You would have been overlooking a city, 20, 30,000 people, about 1,000 years ago. And the origin, how far back does Cahokia go? Well, that's a good question. Monk's Mound, base almost as large as the Great Pyramid, but I have not covered that causeway that comes down to what is called Rattlesnake Mound, all the way out of the park today. Kind of sitting out here, lost to history, clearly seen right down here. That is a video on Cahokia. Glad to do that one today, an aspect of that important place I have not talked about before. There's another ancient American video for you. Glad to do that one for you. Happy birthday to someone special. You all have a very nice day.